You're listening to AM 1490 WWPR, Bradenton, Sarasota, Tampa Bay.
Is it daylight? I can't tell no more. Never had this condition before. Everywhere I turn.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Team Leadership. That's TEEM, Train, Equip, Empower, and Mobilize Leadership. I'm your host, Dr. Cecilia Martin, and I'm so glad to be here tonight. I hope you're having a marvelous Monday, because I am. Hey, and in case you haven't heard, last week I released my new book. It's called Incarcerated, Escaping the Prison of Your Mind. I've been so busy, I haven't had time to promote it, but you'll hear more about it as the days and weeks pass on. It's a real page turner. It's sort of a raw account of my childhood and my father, who was given a 36-year prison sentence, and all of those things that kind of jacked me up as a result. Yeah, it was a raw thing, a raw story to write, but it was a necessary one. I want to say thank you to all of the family, friends, and fans who have been texting in your selfies with the book and sending in videos. So if you want to send your selfie or your video of having purchased the book, which is sold on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold, you can text to 713-252-1978. That's 713-252-1978. Send your video in, send your selfie. It's been so encouraging and exciting to me, and I hope you're enjoying it, and hopefully your life will be changed and you can take this healing journey with me. Now, tonight, I am so glad to have Dr. Alyncia Bowen back with me. She, for those who tuned in last week, it was a doozy, okay? And so this is kind of like a part two, a continued conversation, because we stumbled into some areas that we have to talk about. I mean, she put it out there, right? So Dr. Alyncia Bowen, she currently serves at Franklin University as the Dean of the Ross College of Business. She's also the Executive Director of the Franklin University Leadership Center and Co-Executive Director of the Global Center for Healthcare Education. Hey, Dr. Bowen.
Hey, Dr. Martin.
Thanks for coming back.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to be here tonight.
Oh, my goodness. You opened up a can of worms last week. But before we get into that, today I watched a little bit of the Queen's funeral. Did you have a time to?
Yes.
Yeah, wasn't it magnificent?
It was. I started watching this early, it's like 5:15 a.m.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was the most spectacular thing I've ever seen. I have to say that. I mean, just from the soldiers, the Marines that were there, and the grounds, the people, the jewels, like.
Yes.
It's something like you just never see that in your lifetime.
No, it was amazing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for someone who has done so much great work, I mean, she really has a legacy, and they really rolled out the red carpet. But listen, I'm not here to talk about that queen. I'm here to talk about this queen, Dr. Bowen. Listen, I have to roll out the red carpet for you too, and give you your flowers while you're living, because you are the first African-American woman to serve as dean at Franklin University in Columbus, Ohio, since it was founded 120 years ago.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. How? What? I mean, what's your secret sauce? Did you when you first started working there, did you say, oh, I'm going to break that barrier? How did it happen? I mean, was it organic? I mean, obviously you have some type of unique skill to break that type of amazing barrier.
Actually, when I joined Franklin University as a full-time faculty, I had already served for like 9.5 years as an adjunct. And so I was leaving healthcare. I was tired of 16-hour days. And so I was really just going to go and just kind of get tucked in as a faculty member and just kind of chill for my second career. And I had no idea that there had not been another African-American female dean. And just within the first 6 months, I was pulled in on a major project. And God just continued to open doors. And that project was opening a university for Franklin that served F1 students that couldn't get a visa to come to the U.S. So we built a university from scratch. That's a whole nother story.
Wow.
we built a university within a university from scratch. And
is that the Ohio University?
Yes, it's Ohio University, Ohio National.
Ohio National. Yeah, I was. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So yes, that was exciting work. And I just, I think one of the things is when I get a project, I give 120%. I give everything to it. And I wasn't thinking, I was just working. So that project led to another project and another project and another project. And pretty soon, I was asked to, come back into the Franklin proper to help in a certain area. And I did. And, just kept working hard. Whatever they asked me to do, I would do it. And so, and then my colleague was promoted to the provost or senior vice president level, and I filled in as the director for doctoral studies, and then later that's when I got promoted to the dean. My first dean position was over doctoral studies, and it wasn't something I aspired to. It really was God just opened the doors, and within the first 7 years of being at Franklin University's full time, because it's now going on next year will be 10 years full time. And I've been in my role now about 4 years as a dean. So when you think about all of those opportunities, it wasn't anything I aspired to. The doors just came open as I kept working and as I kept giving my all, giving great ideas, not afraid to take on a challenge. That was the biggest thing, not afraid to take on a challenge and being willing to get out of my comfort zone. I think that's what it was.
Listen, I don't know if you realize it or not, but you are going down in the history books. Like most people don't even know, I don't want to freak you out or anything, but most people don't get to see themselves making history and knowing that you will be in the history books. That's pretty, wow. Yeah. It goes far beyond who's who, which I know you've been on that list too several times.
Well, it didn't dawn on me, Cecilia, to tell you the truth, until I was attending, God love my cousin passed away early in life, and I was attending her services, and it was all happening around the same time. And one of the ladies I've known my entire life, she's known me my whole life. She knew me before I was born. Her name is co-pastor Shirley Jordan. She lives in Mansfield, Ohio. She said to me, I've never met a dean before. And I was like, oh, no. She was like, no, girl, you don't understand. I've never met a Black female dean before.
Wow.
And it was the look in her eye and the sheer excitement and joy. And I realized then that she wasn't kidding. And her excitement and joy landed like, this is real. This is real. And if she feels this way, and she was in her 70s, I believe, at that time, if she feels this way, how many other people feel that way? So I had to then tell myself, stop dumbing down what God has just done for you and just accept that this is a very unique opportunity. And I think it was my family in Mansfield and my friends in Mansfield that really brought it home that this was real. Of course, my family was all excited, but that's when it became real, because to me, it was just the next step to go, keep going. It's the accomplishment check to keep going. It didn't take the time to celebrate it, but my family made me take the time to celebrate it and recognize that this had just happened.
Wow.
So yes.
Goodness, they did. I mean, it's just such a fascinating thing. And like you said, you don't know whose life you're impacting.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we take those things for granted, especially if we're type A and we are achievers. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you're checking that off the list. A notch. I know you don't see it necessarily like
Right.
in your belt, but it's still a check. Like, oh
Mhm.
wow, that was fun. I did that. Check. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is one that you really have to marinate in to say, geez, yeah, I actually made history, whether I was trying to or not. It happened.
Exactly.
Yeah. And now tell us again, remind us, because it was such a fascinating story. Just recap a little bit about how you came into the health industry as a young girl.
Okay. So I always wanted to be a doctor. I always wanted to be a neonatologist, which is a pediatric specialist. I wanted to fix babies that were sick. And even after the show, we were talking a little bit, my mom and I, and even when we would attend our church conventions in Memphis, Tennessee, there was St. Jude's Hospital. And I even visited St. Jude's Hospital when I was younger, because that is an area that I wanted to pediatric specialty illnesses, not necessarily oncology, but pediatric illnesses. So I always wanted to fix babies. And when I was in high school, I had the privilege of attending college the last 2 years of my high school, while I was in high school as well. And I was exposed to so many things. And one of the things was like a medical explorers type of program and a pharmacy explorers program. And so I got a chance to really delve into the healthcare industry. And then when I was 14, one of the pharmacists, the Black-owned pharmacist, his name was Waldo Tyler. He said, hey, why don't you come and volunteer here? You're going to need to know pharmacology in order to practice medicine. And so I started volunteering for him at 14. And he saw that I was really interested. I would show up on Saturday mornings and leave real late Saturday nights. He would send me to the nursing homes to sit with the older patients, because he thought, now, is this real, or is this someone who's just, in it for money? And so I would sit with the senior citizens. I would take on their medications and explain it to them. And it was real exciting and fun. And then I went to college. As we were talking once before, I went to college, started a little early. I think I graduated from high school and turned 17 that summer. And so went to college and started working very heavily towards getting my my undergraduate in biochemistry and physics. Yes, I was one of those people.
Oh my God.
I loved all the sciences. So I was working very hard. I'm a chem and physics major and a minor in communications. And so I went through
just to throw it in there, huh?
Just to throw it in there. I don't know why communications came in, to be honest. I don't know where that came. I love debating. And so I love the debate team that I was on. So I really enjoyed it. So I think that's why I went ahead and did the communications minor. But, so one of the things we did, my sophomore year of college, undergraduate career, is because I was a sophomore, physically, I still was functioning as a senior. So mostly seniors got to go to see autopsies. And so we went to the county morgue and were experiencing autopsies at the time, and we saw men, and I didn't have a problem with watching the men. And then they said, oh, we have a unique one today. We have an 18-month-old baby that drowned, and it was a little black baby. It was a beautiful black baby, and he drowned. He had cerebral palsy. He drowned because his caregiver left him in the bathtub to go answer the phone to make dinner arrangements with her boyfriend.
Oh.
And so as they continued to do the autopsy, just to make sure there was nothing else, I just kept remembering, this is really cruel. How did this happen? And nothing happened to that caregiver. Mm-hmm. And that really angered me. I said, this black baby died in the hands of a white woman. And this is how I said it at that time. And no one cares. That's all I said. I kept saying, and I remember going to class and was really bothered. There was this really cool sociologist. Her name was Dr. Jane. I can't remember her last name. And she kept saying, well, if you're so mad about it, do something about it. And I didn't know what I could do. And she said, do a independent study with me this term. And so I did an independent study with her, and we created our own class, and I studied healthcare and saw how disparate healthcare was, meaning the school I went to was it was a private Lutheran college. And it was a pretty affluent university and in a pretty affluent neighborhood, a Jewish neighborhood. But less than 2 miles away was a very impoverished area.
Mhm.
And so I would ride the bus up and down and pay attention to how people were treated differently just because of the way they looked. And then fast forward, I did an internship with the health system I actually worked for overall. But one of the things that came out, and I didn't share this last time, one of the things that came out of that independent study is she told me to dress differently and go to a clinic to see how I'm treated. And I remember going to the clinic dressed really fluently, you know. Yes, I was one of those little girls that had a Gucci purse and had all the right things and dressed really nicely. And I didn't take an insurance card with me. And they're like, oh yes, we can treat you. There's no problem. There's no trouble.
Wow.
So I gave them, you know, my Capital University address. And, oh, we're fine. We can take care of it. And then later on, I had an insurance card and I dressed a little bit more casual, you know, like a college student with, you know, sweatpants on and hair was a little tousled. And I sat in that waiting room for 6 hours and no one ever came to see if I needed help. And I was doubled over acting as if I was in pain and no one ever did anything. And so I saw quickly how the way you look can change the way the quality of care that you get. So those introductions are what led me to get into healthcare and try to fix the injustices to make certain that everyone had access to healthcare. I wanted to make certain that if you were sick and you needed healthcare, that you received it. That was my goal.
Wow. And, you know, the first time we talked, I didn't catch that the caregiver, when you said caregiver, the last time we spoke, I assumed you meant mother, but it was actually a healthcare provider, so to
Correct.
speak. Taking
Correct.
it. Oh, I see. That's why you were so upset about it. And so, and on your journey in your field, you've experienced some of these racial undertones.
Oh, yes.
And thus, you know, you wanted to fight the injustice around it. Oh, I see. And thus here we go, making history again. African American dean at this institution. So, okay, now I got a clear picture of the journey. You know, you also talked about your family. Oh, I mean, your mom has done some amazing things. We know she's a pastor, she's a business owner. She's a great mom because she raised you. Now, but you didn't mention much about your father the last time we talked. Tell me more about your father.
Well, I didn't mention much about him because I really don't know a lot. Although my parents married and had me and, like I said, shared before, divorced when I was pretty young. My father was not very much a part of my life growing up. However, he was a very educated man. He worked for IBM. He was an IBMer, so he designed computers, and he designed typewriters. The last typewriter I have, actually the last typewriter that went into like a data processor is that he did. I have it right now. It was a Christmas gift one year. But I really didn't have a strong relationship with my father while I was growing up. And so, my father, probably about 10 years before he died, my grandmother passed in 2003. And at her funeral, sounds like a Tyler Perry thing here, at her funeral.
Girl, let me tell you, we all have our Tyler Perry stories. And by the way, for all the listeners, Medea is real. We got a Medea in every Black family. I'm telling you the truth.
We sure do.
Yes.
So we were at my grandmother's funeral in September of 2003 because she passed away August 31st of 2003. And I looked up in the aisle and here comes my father down the aisle and I'm like, oh Lord, what is this? And it is at my cousin's church, our family church in Mansfield. Everybody was there, from bishops from all over the country, family from all over the country, friends. And a lot of them had never seen my father, but when they saw him and they saw me, they were like, oh my gosh, she looks just like her dad. And I was like, yeah. And so he was there and his mom was there and we talked for a few minutes and he asked, basically, could we talk? And I said, sure. So we went to the cemetery and then my dad mentioned that he wanted to, reconnect. And he shared with me he had been really sick and almost died and he wanted to reconnect. And that was really, really hard for me because my grandmother, who was laying in her grave, that's all she ever wanted, was for us to develop a strong relationship. And my mother did too. She worked very hard many times for us to develop a strong relationship, but it just failed. And so,
how old were you when he tried to come back and reconnect?
So I'm trying to think. See, now you want me to tell my age on air?
No.
See, so it was
a roundabout.
I would estimate. So I think that when he came into my life to do that, I was 35.
Okay. Well, Alyncia, you're not that old either.
I know, but I had to think about it. It just felt like.
Yeah, let me say that too, because you are not. I'm not going to tell your age, but you and I are around the same age, and I'm not 50 yet.
Oh, I'm over 50.
Well, but you're not. You're just over it.
I'm 54. I'm very happy because actually no one thinks I'm 54. Everybody thinks
you look 15.
I know everybody thinks I'm still young and in my late 30s at best. And so, yeah, I'm 54, turned 54 this year, July. Yes.
Okay. So you were in your 30s.
I was 35, around 35 when he came back. And so I had to treat him coming back. It was very challenging because I had to treat it like it was ministry. You know, this is a soul. Don't look at it as someone, because, you know, here he is back sick. Can't really do anything. Can't drive to Columbus to see me. He moved back to our hometown in Mansfield. He couldn't really do anything. And I was the one that had to do everything. So I remember.
Didn't you feel some kind of way about it? Because
I did.
He wasn't there the whole time. And then he comes back ill. And it's, you know.
So I remember packing up like some awards that I had that were significant to me and pictures and things like that. And I remember going and sharing those with him. And I remember one of our first conversations, I said to him, I cannot catch you up on the last 30 something years that you were not present, but we can start from today.
My gosh. Yeah, you have to start from today.
Yeah.
I mean,
and we did.
Yeah,
we did. It was a friendship more so than anything.
Right.
And I did share the last time about the first time that I really felt my dad loved me was on his deathbed. And I really realized that he loved me and my mom because it was not a healthy relationship before. And so I think by the time he had gotten to the point where he was going to die, and I knew that it was really real that he was going to die, I had allowed myself to even call him my father. I called him something else for years. I won't say it because it wasn't nice. But I never...
let me tell you, I'll tell you, I stopped calling my father. I guess I'm blown away about these similarities and some of the things that I know I experienced, I thought was unique to me. And maybe someone else is listening and they'll see that, no, this is pretty common for those of us who are detached from our father, because this is my first time hearing the details of this story where you called your father another name. I stopped calling my father Daddy, and I started calling him by his first name, which is Calvin. And I made that very clear to him. I said, we can't go back. I've lived too long without a father. And so you're Calvin, you know. So that's...
Well, I realized I didn't even call him by a name when he called. I would just say, hey, hi, how are you? Yeah. I would never even say father or dad. I think that happened within that last year. And then when he died, I remember calling my mom, telling him my dad died. And she was like, what? And I said, he died. And his last words to me was, I love you. And I remember that very, very vividly. They called me from the hospital saying that he wanted to speak to me. And they struggled to get him off of the ventilator and the BiPAP so that he could speak to me. And he said, and his words were, I love you, baby. And I told him, then I love you too. And it's okay to go. I'm okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I wasn't
Let me get my Kleenex. I'm sorry.
And then I wasn't okay because I'm telling you, oh my God, I did not expect to be sick to my stomach. I didn't expect to cry for so many weeks, months, you know, just to cry. And even Cecilia, it was so traumatic to my whole system that while I was at his funeral, I mean, my hair was just falling out.
Yeah.
My hair fell out. I mean, I lost my hair. That might be a spiritual thing there too, but I lost my hair.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it is so similar to my experience. And so I can't imagine how many others may have experienced the same thing. When the detachment happens, you already go through that grief, right? And then when you lose them physically in this world, there is no substitute for that. And you think that you're going to be okay because you're like, well, we haven't been cool anyway. But it is a grieving that you can't ever really explain unless you experience.
That's right.
Yeah.
You really can't. And I tell a lot of my guy friends who have daughters, whether they're divorced or, never were, that it's a baby mama situation and they have daughters. And I would tell them, please, whatever you do, be very present in their lives. Don't assume that your daughter don't need you, because they do need you. And they need to know that you authentically love them and care for them, because that makes the world of difference of how they interact with everyone.
Yeah, because you mentioned too how when you were little, I'm sorry, girl, you got me over here choked up. But no, it's healthy, the whole crying thing, it's so healthy because, again, I grieved in a way physically, emotionally. My brother and I were there. We're just 13 months apart. And we were both there at my father's deathbed, and then had to ultimately make the decision to take him off life support. And my aunt was there, my father's sister. And she's always kind of been a rock for us, Aunt Maddie, and on his side of the family, and my mom. And, it was just, oh God, it was just so much like the flood of emotions that come that you thought were gone or you didn't have. But at the end of the day, it's still your daddy, And I remember you were talking about how when you were younger, you couldn't say the word divorce. So you said divorce. And you said, when I grow up, I want to be divorced, like my mom, because your mom made singlehood look easy. And I know there's a lot of single women out there who make it look easy. But like you said, we need our fathers. And now, when they're gone, of course, we know we have our Heavenly Father and He's there with us. But if they're, for the men out there who are listening, your kids need you to be there for them emotionally. There are fathers who are there physically who are not there. Okay. So it's not about the physical location. It's about the emotional attachment. So do you think every child needs their father? You said, I want to be divorced like my mom. Do you think every child needs their father, even if it's a bad one?
I think there is a balance. If there's a physical reason why you shouldn't be there, which it was for us, it was safer for us not to be together.
Sure.
No, don't put your life in jeopardy. Please do not put your life in jeopardy. But if it's someone that he could just be struggling with life, there's so many things that keep our men from being a part of the home. I mean, we go back to the roots of slavery. That's all they did, would take our men out of our homes, and the women had to stand up, be strong, and do everything. And so the whole society's about demasculating men of color. And so if we cannot contribute to that, if we can promote them and being whole, then yes, definitely they should be a part. So I think if you can be whole and you can be around this person, your father, and it's safe, yes, they should be a part of your life. I think, my father realized things and apologized, and forgiveness was the best gift I could have ever given him. And once we got past that, yes, we could build a friendship. There's just some things you can't go back and get. I couldn't go back and get. So I think they should be. So my father remarried, and what I learned was he was a great father to his stepchildren. And that was really good, but that wasn't the experience I had. So when I kept hearing, he was great at this, and I was like, great. And he and his wife had a child, and she had memories I didn't have. That's good that she had those, but I didn't have those. I didn't dislike anybody, but I just couldn't fake it like that. So I think that we just have to be honest and truthful, don't, a lot. And there's Joyce Myers used to say, hurting people hurt people. And I think sometimes if we individually, if the parents can get past their hurts, if it's not something physical and it's just something that you can get past, please, by all means, don't be the one keeping fathers away from their children. Now, my mom did everything she could to keep him present, to bring him to the house. I mean, to the point where we'd be sitting up, both of us, all night, because he said he was going to stop by, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. She's looking at me like, I don't even want to tell this child she got to go to bed because he's not coming. Mm-hmm. And later on in life to find out that he was 20 minutes away visiting his mother-in-law. Really? Your daughter's not 20 minutes away. You couldn't come by and still say hi for 5 minutes. But, so my mom was not that parent that kept them away. My grandmother would even say, hey, if she's at the house, come by the house. If you don't want to, everybody made it easy, but that was a choice that he made.
Right. Yeah.
So I think,
and to be fair, a lot of, there are fathers who haven't made that choice.
Yes.
But there are too many that make the choice to be absent or to just be, a baby daddy and not a father. I think back on my marriage to my girl's father and talk about generational curses. Like you say, I think in the Black community, it's not an excuse, but it's kind of true. We have so much to recover from in terms of our families were torn apart. They were torn asunder, and that's not something you can fix, over 50 years, it's a generational thing where it becomes a norm where the mother, the child is ripped from the mother, the father's ripped from the home, the mother's left to fend and figure things out. But I think about my relationship with my ex-husband, the father of my children. And, we were young and we were broken when we got married. Now, we're friends now, but it took a long time, after the divorce, because the divorce was toxic. The relationship turned toxic. And we both needed a lot of healing, but we've been in each other's lives for 30 years now. And, thank God we were able to, at some point, salvage a friendship, because of our kids. And because we were friends long before we married. But I think about how it was something I never wanted to be divorced. And out of all the accomplishments I've had, first generation, doctoral, degrees, traveling the world, being in the military, and especially because my childhood growing up was so crazy, to overcome all of that and still get divorced. I was like, oh my God, I just can't. And then I was in another relationship, I would never give that person the privilege of speaking their name ever in my life. And I, that was a whole different situation. They were not who they said they were, but my point is that, with this thing in the Black community, we have to do better with keeping our families together. And sometimes we can't. Like I said, in my situation, I think I would have been divorced anyway, at some point, or we would have killed each other. Maybe, we were in our late 20s, and then I broke the generational curse. I didn't get married. I didn't have children out of wedlock. That was a thing. Like, I'm not going to have children out of wedlock. I'm not going to do this. Not gonna do that. And then here I am, like,
right.
And we've been divorced, probably 10 years now. But the point is, I didn't want that for my kids either. And I pray that when they get married, that they can say that they've been married for 25 years, 30 years, what have you. And I don't know, maybe if I remarry, I'll be like the queen, honey, live to 96. You'll have my testimony. Ooh, I've been married for 40 years,
Well, honestly, I know my mom, she would probably say she never wanted me not to be married. She always wanted me to be married.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand that, because when you have a person of your caliber who's so accomplished, it's kind of like you're cheating the world not to procreate, and continue the legacy. How do you feel about that? Because did you not have children by choice, or was it, that you can't, if you don't mind me asking?
So I felt like at first, and I never forget the conversation with my pastor at the time. I was 8 years old when I felt God calling me.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, I would wake up in the middle of the night and my mom would say, okay, pray and ask God to reveal things. And so that's how I started learning how to journal. And I felt like God was calling me to singleness, and I didn't know how to express it at 8 years old. And my pastor at the time, Superintendent Richard Houston Holmes, he would say, was Sister Leachy, because he couldn't say Alyncia, Sister Leachy, we're just going to pray about it. And so we just prayed about it. And as he said, I was a unique child, and we just kept talking about it. So I never, ever really thought of myself as getting married. It wasn't because my parents were divorced. I just never saw myself getting married. I mean, when I look back, and my mom and my grandmother laughed about it, my Barbie dolls never got married.
Really?
Her name was Milena, and she had cars and houses, and she traveled, and she had lots of friends, and she was just a great person, but she never got married.
No, one of the Barbies are supposed to get married. Come on.
I know they're supposed to, but Melina was the girl. She owned a fashion plaza. She had her own Corvette. She had all of that good stuff. So I never really thought about it. I just knew that I had goals in life. My mom used to teach me boys and books didn't mix. I don't know if you ever heard that phrase.
Yeah.
Staying focused on your goals. I've had boyfriends. I had boyfriends all along, but it was just, I never got serious. I never got serious as to wanting to get married. And so when it came to children, no, you don't have kids without being married. You don't have children out of wedlock. You don't do that. And so there were some in my family who did, and you don't do that. So I just knew I did not want to have children unless I was married. And so I never had a desire to have kids. So what's funny is I helped to raise three children, three of my cousin's children. So I did have the privilege, of helping to raise children. And so
it ain't easy, is it?
It's not easy.
Honey, let me tell you. So the hardest job in the world.
And then it was also, so around the same age that my father came back into my life, my grandmother got sick, was dying. At the age of 35, I found out that I had a female condition, that the doctor said, you won't be able to have children. And I was like, you can't tell me I can't have kids. I can have kids if I want to have them. I remember that was my personality. Don't tell me what I can't do.
Don't tell me what I can't do. I'll check that off the list.
I know. And so for 16 years, I dealt with a condition that they couldn't name, but they said it was cancer. It looked like cancer, act like cancer, but it wasn't cancer. Okay. And so for 16 years, I dealt with it until in 2019, I almost died on the table twice. The first time they did surgery, they thought they found tumors, and the first they thought it was only one. They went in to get it, and when they went to get the one tumor, they found out that there were four, and they had to cut me from hip to hip. And so at that time, I was really into bodybuilding. I was getting ready for my first competition, and here you've cut up my abs, and my abs look awful now. And so now I'm dealing with something that I never thought I would have to deal with. And no one in my family dealt with this. I was a vegetarian, ate good, body was ripped up tight and right. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? And so went through all of that, went through treatments for 16 years, had many, many procedures. And then all of a sudden in 2019, they told me my body was ready to have surgery again. Of course, everybody was scared because my blood count was so low. And it had been for those time. And now this time there were cancer cells. And so, but God is so God. When they went in, they found the cancer. It was sitting there in pockets. They took out everything they had to take out, and which was everything. And the doctor was in tears when he came to my mom. He said, I don't even know how she survived all this time, because it was there. It was physically there, and it was bad. I don't know how she walked. I don't know how she traveled. I don't know how she did her life, because it was bad. And my mom was scared when he came out, because he was crying, and she thought, oh my God, what happened on the table?
Right.
And I walked out of the hospital because that was the best I had felt in 16 years. Even though I was cut up, I walked out. But so then where I had made the choice not to technically have children, then the choice was not mine to have after all.
Right. Wow.
And so maybe that's God's way of buffering me from that pain.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I had wanted children all alone, then to not be able to have them, maybe that would have been more devastating. But it still is kind of weird, because you kind of think, well, what would have been to have a child that looked like me, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I have beautiful goddaughters. I got a beautiful goddaughter that I can pour into, and other young ladies I can pour into. And I love the fact that I can still leave my legacy with other young people.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Your story is so inspiring. You are a walking miracle.
Yes.
Like literally. And all that you survived, and to know that you were a vegetarian,
Mm-hmm.
you were a bodybuilder, an award-winning bodybuilder too, right?
Well, I didn't read it. I was getting ready to.
Oh, you were
start
getting
my
ready to.
competition.
Okay.
Because,
okay.
you didn't see many people that look like us that did that back then.
Right.
So
That's
it was
true.
kind of cool to do it and see how far I could get my body. It took me 20 years to get my head in the game to compete. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was ready. And then, of course, it was taken away from me.
Yeah. That's the way I felt. I had trained for a half marathon when I was in my doctoral program.
Mm.
And the weekend of the marathon, they wouldn't excuse me from class. They were like, nope. And I was like, no, I've trained for so long,
Yes.
But yeah, so, the fact that you accepted that choice, or
Mm-hmm.
the choice that was made for you, and you're still thriving. I mean, it's just, it's encouragement to a lot of women out there who have experienced the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I know for sure, where the choice wasn't theirs, and still life goes on,
It does.
Yeah, life goes on. Well, what about marriage? Is that in the cards for you now? Because you were called to singleness, which again may have been why your path has been the way it has been, even down to children or not. So,
right.
Do you still feel like you're called to singleness? Is marriage in the cards for you? You got a boo? Was it complicated?
It is complicated.
Okay.
So I do feel that God has changed the call, and it's taken several years to deal with the shift, because I'm one of those girls that love being single. A lot of my guy friends, they would say, you make a great wife, yada, yada, yada. I travel for my work. I travel for the missions. And I would say, okay, so would you allow me to do what I do if we were married? They're like, oh yeah. So it's really funny, because everybody always tell you you're good marriage material until they want to change you.
Right.
So I think that it is definitely part of God's plan for me. And I'm learning to accept it, but I'm also learning to be conscious of who he brings in my life, making sure it's not an Ishmael versus an Isaac. I don't want the counterfeit. I want the real deal.
Wait a minute now. I've challenged you on this last time.
Mm-hmm.
But, we have God's will, and then he gives us free will and choice.
Correct.
Do you want to be married one day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Here
I can say that now. Yes.
Here comes. Look, whoever it's complicated with, he better get his act together, because you on the market.
So as I used to perform the wedding vows, do you take such and such to be your awfully, not lawfully, but awfully wedded?
Yeah, because it's for better or for worse. I'm telling you. And it's an epidemic. It's the new pandemic in terms of marriage and divorce. And just a few statistics, because there are I think 330 million people in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And almost 200 million of them are, of course, over 21 and older and eligible for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in 2018, marriages, according to the CDC, is at an all-time low. So I'm telling you, it's like an epidemic. It was like only 39 million people who had never wanted to be married. Well, I mean, I'm saying only, but that's a huge number, and
Right.
they haven't been married.
Mhm.
But out of 1,600,000 divorces,
Mhm.
marriages, I should say, 630,000 divorces. So that's over half.
Yes.
Like it's a real problem in every community. And
It
it's
is.
this whole relationship thing. And now the game has changed. People are meeting online, and some of them are having real success.
Mhm.
But I had a guest on who was saying, they get stuck, or you can't get stuck online. You can't do dinner online. You can't pay bills on, together. Like, you have to do life together.
You do have to do
And
life together.
Yeah. And I think that's what people are challenged with, because so much has changed. And I'm going to say too, I did have someone who brings this up from time to time when we talk about marriage and relationships. What do you say to people who would say that if you are single, you can't talk about it? Like, because we've talked about, I've been married and divorced, so I know the ups and downs of marriage. It's not for the faint of heart either. What do you say? How do you feel about people saying single people need to be quiet on the topic?
I think that's a very shallow perception, because single women and single men can see things differently. And so I'll give an example. I have a friend that's been married for a long time, and I was telling her she was doing some things that was just downright, out of order. She's a pastor's wife. And I was like, you stop doing that. Somebody else going to fill in, and they're going to do it much better than you. And I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about just the basics. And I said, you've told your spouse some things, but how do you know it's been a joy being married to you? So I could tell her from that perspective, not that I wanted her husband or anything, because that wasn't true. But I had to tell her, you're telling him what he's not doing for you, but who says you're his, that you're everything for him too. So you need to stop from a single person's perspective, I can say that because that's just basic. There's some things, I probably cannot talk on just because of my life experiences or lack thereof. But I think that as a single person, I can tell some things to married couples that they probably should want to hear.
Okay, I hear y'all.
They should want to hear.
You better listen now. Okay. I hear you, because you do, I think single people have a unique perspective. And I think marriages that are healthy and whole, those folks also have a unique perspective, because Definitely. It really is for better or for worse. And that, you can't marry for these shallow reasons anymore, because you can marry somebody who's fine and, maybe have good money, a good job or whatever, and they could get into a tragic accident and never be able to be intimate, or never, can't work again. Are you still going to be there for them to take care of them? Because that's what love is. You would do it for your child,
that's
you would
right.
do it for your parent. So would you do you love that person if you saw their life totally turned upside down and something tragic? So, yeah.
When you get to my age, and anything, I think anyone over 40, the likelihood of marrying someone that's never been married, even though I've never been married, can be kind of slim, especially for, it's more acceptable in our society for a woman not to have been married, but for a man not to have been married over 40. What's wrong with him, And then if he doesn't have any children, even though we don't want them to have children in every state, if you don't have any children, something wrong, Yeah,
it's a double-edged sword. They really can't win, because it's like, if you over 40 and you never been married,
what's wrong with you?
Right. And then if you over 40 and you don't have any kids,
Yep. Exactly. Especially, and that it is a double edge. And then I think also on the flip side, then you get men, because we talk about women and women being hurt, but there are men who've been in relationships and they've been devastated.
Yeah.
They've been physically abused. They've been emotionally traumatized.
Right.
And then the real good thing, you know what I'm talking about? The Bible says that he that findeth a wife findeth a good thing. That real good thing, they can't even hardly handle it, because they've had so much trauma.
Right. Oh yeah,
And
they
so,
need to talk about their stuff too.
yeah. So then sometimes as the good thing before you become their good thing, you got to pray them through.
Mm-hmm.
Got to pray them through and pray that God will condition them for you.
Right.
And condition you for them, because you don't want to do something to trigger something, just like we said for women, but it goes both ways. So marriage is definitely, I think you said it last time. It's a relationship that mirrors what our relationship with Christ should look like. It's not just a father-daughter relationship with God.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But he said he's married to the church. So,
honey,
the church is his bride.
Yes, it is. That's a whole nother topic.
That's a whole nother topic.
Did you see Honk for Jesus?
No, I did not. I've heard about it though.
Oh gosh, girl, you gotta watch it.
I would love to go to the movies, but I will tell you, I'm that type of person that gets to the movie, and before they get through with the promos at the beginning, I'm asleep.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not.
Okay.
So your listeners are going to laugh. I saw Black Panther for the first time about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago when it was on television.
Oh, you should have kept it.
Because I knew I couldn't go to the theater and see it and stay awake. I just happened. I said, oh, I would love to see Black Panther. And I flipped the channel and there it was.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Your people could be like, oh my God.
Okay. All right. Let me help you for a second. Okay. First of all.
But that's just because, honestly, just because of being busy and then also tired. And then that whole scene of the lights going out, that's not good for me. If the lights go down, my eyes be like, oh, am I supposed to go to sleep now? Are we going to try to go to sleep? And then all of a sudden, I'm totally knocked out. And then I'm waking up when everybody's clapping and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't need to pay money just to sit up here and sleep.
Yeah. I hear you. And, so let me help you. So one, Honk for Jesus is on Peacock for free if you have Peacock. And then have you seen Avatar, the first one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, good. Did you see that in the theater?
Mm-mm. No.
Oh, it's kind of like you need to see it on a big screen in 3D because it is first of all, it is the most amazing thing you'll ever see in 3D.
Okay.
And it's still the highest grossing movie of all time.
I've heard about it. Yes.
Yeah. And they're showing it again for abbreviated amount of time this month, and I think next month, because I think the new one is coming out in December or early next year.
Okay.
So take some espresso, get you a Starbucks or something.
Go see it. Okay.
Okay, come on and bring your life into 3D color.
I know, right?
But no, Honk for Jesus is a conversation piece.
Okay.
I'm telling you, it's like we need to talk about it.
Okay. I've heard, yeah.
Yeah.
You said Peacock, I have to check that out. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. The church ain't gonna like it one bit.
Mm-mm. No, probably not.
No, it's no probably, but child, I'm telling you. But I digress. Now, your book, When God Says Wait, is, first of all, the title in itself is just encompasses all that you've experienced. Tell us what we'll learn from reading that book. I have a copy of it right here, and it's really good. It talks about the mentors in your life and your experience. But tell the listeners what they'll learn from your book, When God Says Wait.
Well, one thing you'll learn is that there's value in the wait, meaning there's a reason why God is telling you to wait. He didn't say no. He didn't say yes. He didn't say stop. He didn't say go. He said wait, which is pause, Selah, pause, just kind of do that. And when we pause, and that gives us an opportunity to hear what God is saying regarding what we're going through. And as I shared, it's like your destiny station. It's your pause to check where you're at, to make certain that you're going in the right direction. I think one of the things that's critical is that you learn the voice of God during the wait. You learn his tone and his tenor. You learn his smell. You learn dimensions about God that you don't get when you're just running fast and doing things that you are normally doing. But the waiting process teaches us that it's not punitive to be told to wait, but it's usually something that we need to learn that's critical to who we are and who we're becoming. And so that the wait is essential. It was for me. I learned how to fast. I learned how to pray. I learned, a lot of times people say, pray with me that God will give me direction and clarity. Well, that season taught me how to pray and hear God for myself. And while it's great to have everybody praying with you, there are some situations, things we go through in life, we just need to be able to hear God for ourselves. And you then don't have any question or doubt. I learned so much about myself. I didn't realize how impatient I was. And I didn't even realize that I had not really written God into my life, that I was living my life, but I had not consulted him about it. So the wait taught me that I had not consulted God, that I had not said, is this what you have for me? It was like, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. But I had never said, this is what I wanted, to committed my plans to him and then allowing him to establish my path. I had not done that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of accomplished people and type A personalities like ourselves, we tend to be achievers and overachievers. And when we go aggressive, I mean, I've told I have the tenacity of a bulldog. We lockjaw in. And sometimes, if you are really, if you're a Christian and you want God at the core of your life, you really do have to pause and say, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Or am I working my checklist? Am I working my, my to-do? And is it possible to ever wait too long?
Yes and no. That's a twofold. So if it's a God ordained wait and you're hearing him, he knows when to release you. Okay. And if you're listening to him, you know when he's releasing you. But if you're not hearing him, you're going to be in that season longer than you need to be.
Yeah, if you're not hearing him, that's the first problem, right?
Exactly. So that's when sometimes we're there too long because we're not hearing him. We're not learning the lesson. We're acting as if we're spiritually retarded. And so, or either we're just being stubborn and bullheaded and we're just not being obedient. And I think for the most part, when you're in that rebellious state, yes, your wait's going to be too long. Because it's like if God called you to do something in your 20s and you don't choose to hear him until you're 60, physically, there's some things you cannot do at 60 that you could do in your 20s.
Say that, honey.
And there's some, 20, you were able to start a church, do this, that, and other. 60, you're trying to retire.
Right. So, you're trying to be the church.
Exactly.
I am the church.
Exactly. So your things change. And so sometimes people are trying to live out what God called them to do in their 20s, in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And it's like, no, that's not where you're at now.
Yeah.
So that's like a too long of a wait. Yes.
Yeah. The season has passed and
yes,
you run the risk of, like you said, it's swinging back around again when you don't have the same pace,
correct,
the same resources, the same
correct
connections. I don't think you can miss your purpose, but I do think you can work it differently. It looks different. But so how can listeners, we're wrapping up, how can the listeners get your book, When God Says Wait?
Yes. So within the next week, it should be available on Amazon. But until then, you can email me, Alyncia, ALYNCIA, PhD, Paul Harry David @gmail.com. Alyncia PhD @gmail.com.
Great. Guys, make sure you send her your email, reach out to her. It's a good book, When God Says Wait. And we don't want to wait too long. We want to do what we have to do.
That's
while
right.
we have strength and life and breath, all that good stuff and resources. So thank you again for joining me tonight. I mean, this was just great conversation. I mean, really great conversation. So thank you again.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for all the listeners out there. Thank you for this 1 hour of power. And as always, thank you for being a team player. Good night, everybody.